Greetings! Welcome to another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series, the series where we cover mocks from the community to help inspire you for things that you might want to build in the future. Today's episode is a requested theme on aliens. We're going to be talking about those guys that come from outer space or live among us. Dun, dun, dun. So without further ado, let's begin. But before we begin, remember you can of course submit your own stuff to the show, but more on how to do that at the end of the show. So let's begin. The first mock that we have today is by Kelvin Lowe and is called Invader 646. I love this mock. Very adorable, very fun. An excellent use of some of these awesome balloon parts, which you've seen on a couple different mocks throughout the Bionicle Inspiration series. Sometimes they've been taken out of their balloon form and just used as the single panels, because of course that balloon piece is, I think, 8 or so of those sort of shell-like panel pieces that when put together form this awesome balloon shape. And here it works really well as a kind of Martian brain alien type kind of design, very similar to these guys. So very, very cool to see that. I think that's a very clever concept. And yeah, that could be achieved with a whole variety of things. You know, I've seen people before just use sort of like canister pieces and pour pink studs in there, and that kind of looks like a brain in a jar of some kind. So I don't know, that's sort of a kind of humorous, fun take on an alien concept, even outside of Lego. And so it's cool to see that applied in some way in Lego form here. So that's definitely something to think about, is the kind of type of alien you want. Definitely do your research before and decide. And throughout the episode we'll see a bunch of different concepts of aliens. They're all fairly different to each other, which is always cool. So yeah, that's a cool concept to think of. Something else I love about this mock is the very, very clever eye design here. Simply using some dish pieces and stuff, and then adding a lightsaber rod in there to get that white pupil, or maybe it's light grey, I can't tell. But either way, looks very cool. And something else that I like about it is the fact that it has eyebrows too, because without the eyebrows, it would still be really adorable and cute, but adding those eyebrows adds a lot of expression, which is awesome. You know, and I don't know if those eyebrows are posable or not, but it would be so cool if they were, because then you could have him be sort of quizzical, sad, happy, all sorts of things. Yeah, if you can add eyebrows to a mock, I definitely recommend it, because you really get to play around with their expressions there, which is always fun. I also really like his ray gun here. Again, it actually uses some of those dish pieces, but that's really fitting, because most sort of science fiction alien type ray guns look a bit like that. So it's very cool to see that. It's very, very, very fitting weapon for an alien as a death ray gun of some kind. It's very cool, very fitting. And another quick thing I like about this mock is the base. Always nice to see sort of system brick-built bases like that. Always just adds a lot more to the character. I always think it's really cool to see. So excellent work, Kelvin. Very nicely done. Very cool concept. Let's move on to the next mock, which is by Tony A. Yeah. And is called Funky Haired Alien, and that is exactly what he is. He has some fantastic hair, using some of these nocturne, glow-in-the-dark, bluish coloured spike pieces there to make a really funky hair design. It's exactly what the name details. It's very, very nicely done. I really like that. I think that's a clever idea to just kind of play around with parts in that way and you give your mock some funky hair. I think it's really cool. It's also a really cool colour scheme. I really like the choices of colour here. I mean, just black and white is always nice, but it's even cooler to see these highlights of that glow-in-the-dark blue colour that we saw on Nocturne and Gadunka and a couple other Mari Wave sets. I think it's very, very cool to see, because, I don't know, it in itself is a very funky, out there, alienistic kind of colour to a degree. And so I think that's just a very clever choice of colour, and also cool how he's layered it on this. Just it's simply being the hair, and then it also kind of being these gauntlets on his arm. It's just a sort of subtle additional accent colour, but it works nicely. You know, sometimes you don't need to go overboard on the colour. It can just be concentrated on a sort of, smaller part of the mock, and I think it just works really well. I think it's really cool. Something else that I think is really cool about this mock is that it's somewhat normal and somewhat simple. In terms of, when we take a look at the other alien before, it's very sort of cute, out there kind of design, whereas this is a little bit more simplistic. It is almost sort of Toa-like, or dude-like, as some people like to call it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's cool. Maybe if you're building an alien, you don't want to go too out there or too, supernatural science fiction-y. You actually just want it to be fairly humanistic and normal, and just have subtle differences. Like this, he has a really funky hair, or he's got glowing arms, stuff like that. Yeah, that's something to definitely think about, is how out there do you want to go? And here we see on this mock, it's a very effective alien, and, it still works really well being fairly humanoid and fairly normal, fairly somewhat Toa-like, for lack of a better term. I think that's really cool. I think it's a great way to kind of approach an alien, depending on the look you want to go for. So nice work, Tony, otherwise known as Lord Oblivion. Let's move on to the next mock, which is by Brick Thing and is simply called Alien, which of course, for those of you who may not recognize it, this is the alien from the movie Alien, or the movie Alien vs. Predator, that whole line of alien movies. The technical term, I believe, is xenomorph. Very, very cool. That's always something to think about as well. You know, we've seen two other really clever alien designs. Definitely take a look at some of the aliens from video games, movies, TV, pop culture as a whole. There's a lot you can draw from there. And of course, you could even get statues, maquettes, all sorts of, actual real-life tangible objects that you can use to kind of study it. I've always said before, I kind of mentioned it at the start, it's always important to, grab some reference images. Go online, Google alien, Google, extraterrestrial, all sorts of weird things like that, and just see what comes up and see what can inspire you. You never know, you might find an image somewhere and go, ooh, that gives me an idea, or hey, this looks a bit like this piece. Actually, you know what? I could use this part for a claw, something like that. Who knows? Who knows? Very cool. Something I love so much about this mock is the tail on it. It's cool how it sort of slowly gets bigger and smaller and then kind of, it's just funky. It looks really cool. But, of course, it uses a heck ton of ball joints. Lots and lots of ball joints. I highly recommend going on Bricklink or going on eBay, anywhere you buy your parts, and just buying a crud load of ball joints, because, man, the possibilities are really endless when you have a huge amount of ball joints. It's always fun to play with a lot of them. And, you get a really fun tail like that. It's really cool. That said, maybe you don't want to use all your ball joints on a tail, but when you have so many to play with, I mean, in the past I think I did a Bricklink order ages ago for like 80 ball joints, and it was like, ah! And I was just playing around with using heaps of ball joints in ways that I normally wouldn't, because I like to be a bit more sparing with them since they're such a useful piece. But when you've got so many, maybe you can play around with them in some more abstract, fun ways and get some really unique results, because I often find that people that use a lot of ball joints in mocks, they get to play with things in some really nice ways. It's always fun. So very, very cool. Something else I really like about this is how he's played around with the textures. Some people might argue that some of these textures might be a bit messy. I don't necessarily mind it. I think it's really cool. But you take a look at the original source material. So here's an image of what a xenomorph looks like. They actually kind of almost look sort of skeletal to some degree. And certain aspects, kind of like the head and stuff, those bits are a lot more smoother. And I think this mock actually matches that quite nicely. It's got the overall shape down packed. The texture kind of matches how it actually looks. I think it's very nicely done. And I think that's something, whether you're building a xenomorph or just an alien in general, is to think about the textures in some way. Do you actually want to kind of have that unique contrast like this mock of a sort of more, well, in the reference material, it's sort of more skeletal, but here you could argue it's kind of that greebled, sort of rough texture. So yeah, do you want that? Do you want that kind of unhinged sort of, scary kind of texture? Or do you want it to be very smooth and kind of creepy and slimy to some degree, which is also quite alien-like? I think this mock kind of perfectly looks at both of those and kind of blends it nicely, fitting with the source material, as well as having a nice balance between the two where it does sort of just look a little bit unnatural. Because, I mean, essentially that's what an alien is. It's kind of non-human for certain aspects of aliens, or certain depictions of aliens are, at least. And, I think it's kind of cool to kind of have that juxtaposition and contrast between textures on an alien. It's, something to think about, at least. And if done correctly, it's something that could be, very nicely done. And I think it is very nicely done on this mock here. Also, a great part use there, using that black Borax head piece there as sort of the main part of the head of the xenomorph. It actually works very nice. It's a very nice part to match that. So, fantastic work, Brick Thing. Let's move on to the bonus mock, which is by Red and is called Avic Cyl the Technomancer. Very cool. I absolutely love this mock. This one, we've looked at three very different but still very cool alien types, and this one's a little bit more out there and a little bit more awesome. Really like its color scheme. I think that's something that's really cool about aliens, is because they're, creatures that you've never seen before, maybe they have some more abstract and weirder color schemes, like this, orange and purple. Not a color scheme you see every day. It's they're quite contrasting colors in some degree, but they actually complement each other quite nicely. So I think that's something to think about if you're building an alien. It's just kind of experiment with colors and definitely kind of go out there with some abstract weird colors, because it works. They're aliens. I also really like the kind of very different style of arms and legs here. We've got this, it's kind of sort of digigrade style of legs, the old chicken leg design there. It looks perfect. Looks really cool. It looks, yeah, like I said, very out there and very, yeah, alien-like. Really cool. Not sure how legal it is, but I really also like how he's used these purple cannon pieces there and then shoved some of this tubing through there. Looks really cool. It's actually quite effective. I think it works nicely. It's also really cool to see that sort of tubing texture and part used throughout the mock here. It's a nice sense of cohesion throughout the mock. I think that's awesome. I also really like the arms, like I was saying. It kind of goes from, the top part's sort of skinnier and smaller there, then it kind of branches out and then goes into this two-fingered, cool-looking alien hand design there. It's very nice. It's very nice. I like that he's able to play a lot with proportions and just how the body works on this alien, because it's not human. You can do that. You can play around and do whatever works. I think that's awesome. It's also really awesome seeing the sort of really funky out there staff, as well as the really funky out there head that he's got. This, just going back to the staff though, it's just sort of layering all these axles and lift arms and stuff like that. And yeah, even looking at the handle there, it's all sort of curvy and all over the place. It looks very alien. It looks very unique. It looks very out there, which is very fitting of an alien. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself here, but it's something you see a lot of, and I think it's really important to kind of stretch the boundaries on that if you're building an alien, or at least if that's the alien type that you're going for, because you really can afford to, and something like that looks really cool. So yeah, very nicely done, Red. I think that's a very, very cleverly designed mock. Let's move on to the bonus mock. Oh, I bet none of you saw that coming. This mock is by Moko and is called Saturnian. So something I love so much about this, I wanted to quickly touch upon this before we finish the episode. Always fun to just play around with parts. Always fun to just have a good time. I always say if you're making Lego and you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. So definitely, pick up some of the more obscure, weird parts that you have that you never use, or they just sit there, and just go build something really funky out there and super weird, because you can. You kind of get a bit more license with it with an alien, like I've been saying before, but heck, you could do that with any mock. Why not? Why not just play around, use some of these weird dinosaur parts, or weird sort of snake, spider legs, all sorts of weird things like this that he's used here to create this funky out there awesome design. He's even got this little tongue. He's got a fun little head design there that's sort of in the middle of the body instead of on the head. And I always think that's something that's clever to think about. Whether you're building a mech, which you could still do it with, or an alien, where is the head? Is the head actually the neck on top of the body, or is it in the middle of the body? Is it on his waist? Is it on his bum? Who knows? Fun to play around, fun to just experiment there. Also really cool to see these tan antennas sort of sticking out there just above the head. It's very clever and very alien-like just to add antennas on stuff. Certain character designs in Star Wars have been that. They were just humanoid, and then they're like, nah, let's add some antennas, or give them some extra arms, something like that, and then suddenly they're an alien. So yeah, something fun like that, something to play around with, something to think about. Very cool. So that's it for 5 mocks by 5 fantastic builders. Be sure to check the links in the description, because these guys have a lot more mocks that you can check out, and definitely worth having a look at, because they are some very, very good builders. Like I said, you can of course submit your own mocks to the show. You can do so by checking the links in the description to my social media, where you will find my Flickr, Instagram, Facebook, and the other one that I'm probably forgetting. I think there's 4. Maybe I'm wrong, but you'll have to look for yourself and see what that is. It's the mock pages. That's the one. All of those places have personal messaging systems, or places you can comment on stuff. Just chuck a comment there with a link or pictures or whatever, and then I'll add it to the list and put it on the show. Bear in mind, I have a very large backlog of episodes and a large backlog of submissions. Try to make my way through all of them with every episode that I make. So if you don't see a mock on the next one, you'll probably see it on the one after, or the one after that, or the one after that. Anyway, that's about it for today, guys. Hope you had a fantastic day. Happy building. Make some aliens. Show me what you made. I'm always keen to see. See you in the next one, guys. Bye for now.